Yeah. I have a friend whose son is at Alabama and hasn't gotten tested, but he's getting symptoms. So,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Poor guy.
I also have a son at Alabama.
Oh.
And he has been tested. He tested negative, but
Oh, good.
a distant friend tested positive, so he had to get tested. And he had
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
They have a lot of kids there.
That's the
There are a
truth.
lot. There are a lot. Two of my kids went, so
It's a great school. Go Bama.
it's a lot of fun when football's going on.
Roll Tide.
That's right.
It looks like we have the majority of the people here, so we can go ahead and get started. My name is Heather Henneman, and I'm really excited to be co-chairing the Parent Sounding Board again this year. This year, I have the pleasure of working with Diane, and Diane represents our fabulous West Side. Diane, do you want to say hello?
Absolutely. Hi, I am Diane Eid. I have been here at D20 with a child in one of our schools for 13 years now, been on Parent Sounding Board for 7 years. Time really does fly. And I just want to say thank you so much for letting me co-lead with Heather. I know this is going to be an amazing, although very interesting year, and I look forward to getting to know all of you.
Diane, thank you so much for joining the team. We're really excited to have you on board. I would like to thank all of you for your flexibility. I know that we had to change the time at the last minute due to a couple of conflicts within the district, and I'm very thankful that all of you were willing to roll with that. Thank you. And the change in venue, but hopefully this will be okay and we'll be able to roll with this and make it work well. A couple things that we'd like to ask, just to make sure that everything goes as smooth as possible, is if you wouldn't mind just making sure that your microphones are on mute. It's up to you whether or not you want to have your cameras on or off. And if anybody has any questions for the provider or for the presenter, if you just want to go ahead and put those in the chat, and then we can ask them at the end of the presentation. And I think that will probably be the best way to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. And then we can have some question and answer time at the very end if you'd have something that you want to ask verbally. Typically, the way that we start every year is we go around the room and we have everyone introduce themselves, but that's a little bit more challenging this year. Anne is able to see the participant list. So Anne said that she would go ahead and call on everyone. If you would just give us an idea as to where your kids go to school and maybe something positive that's happened to you in 2020 so that we can start the year off on a great note. I'll start. My name is Heather Henneman, and all 4 of my kids are at DCC. I have 1 at every level. And our positive for 2020 is we just moved into a new house, and we're very excited about it.
I guess I'll go next real quick. My name is Diane Eid. I have 2 daughters, Natalie, who's a senior at Air Academy, and Kitty, who's a sophomore at Air Academy, and a 3rd daughter who's actually at SMU, Southern Methodist, as a sophomore this year. Maybe she'll get to stay, we're hoping. But great to represent the West Side.
Will, would you like to go next?
Was that me?
Yes, Will can be board member.
Yeah. Actually, in my presentation, I'll do a quick introduction of myself. So I'll defer to the next person.
Mr. Gregory?
Sure, thank you. I'm Tom Gregory, superintendent, and I am also be speaking to everyone a little bit later, so I will hold off. But I have been superintendent now for like 14 months. Very interesting 14 months. I have 2 boys, both attended Discovery Canyon, Antelope Trails, Challenger, and both graduated from Pine Creek High School. And my wife is also an employee of the district. She is the registrar at Pine Creek High School. So with that, I'll turn it over to the next person.
Alexia Bastianson, sorry. Alex, I think you're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you. So my name's Alexia Bastiansen. I have Eli, who's a sophomore at Rampart, and Luke went all the way from Academy International to Rampart and is a sophomore at Swarthmore College. And I think my positive was having 5 extra months with him at home, although he may disagree a little bit with that. But it was nice to have 4 of us laughing and having some fun in between the chaos that was COVID.
Amy Esquivel.
Hi there. I'm Amy Escabel. I think I just turned my camera on, so some of you might see me, but I'm at work. I actually have 2 students, one at Liberty this year in 9th grade and one at Timberview, 7th grade actually. This is their first year at those schools, so it's really been challenging not to be able to meet friends. But they're doing what they got to do, right? So my positive is that I decided to go back to school this year.
Okay, we have Barbara logged in as a guest. I'm not sure the last name.
It's Barbara Dawson. I have a 3rd grader at Chinook Trail Elementary. And we're just excited that he's able to go back to school. He really missed his friends.
Charlene Marlette.
Hello. So we have 2 children. Our daughter is a senior at Pine Creek, and our son is a freshman at Pine Creek. So I'm no longer representing Challenger. I'm now representing Pine Creek with Amanda Corley. And positive for this year was on Valentine's Day, our daughter bought her first car. So it's named Erin. She loves it.
Bree O'Neill. If someone's speaking, they're muted. Is Bree O'Neill from Legacy Peak here? Okay, let's go on to Amanda Corley.
Hello, I'm Amanda Corley. I have a senior at Pine Creek High School, and my husband also teaches there. And our positive is we built a deck on the front of our house this year and have socially distanced filled it with kids all summer and neighborhood kids from around, and it's just been really fun, but weird, but fun.
Courtney Smith.
Hi, I'm Courtney Smith. I'm representing Rampart High School. I have a daughter that graduated from there in 2018, and then I have a senior and freshman there now. And my positive for 2020 is getting to have more time with my family.
Grant Smith.
Hi, sorry, oh, it says the video is not working. Oh, shoot. I was trying to turn the camera on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So I don't know why my camera, it says the video isn't working, but my name is Dawn Smith, and I'm sorry, I'm signed on with my son's account. I'm representing Discovery Canyon High School. I have a freshman there who's Grant, and then I have actually a freshman at Colorado Mesa who just graduated from Discovery Canyon back in the spring. And our positive is that we got a new puppy this summer. His name is Sunny. So I was going to show him to you, but my video is not working. So I'll have to do that another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie Culp.
Hi, I have a 6th grader at Chinook Middle, and my Mountain View kiddo is currently temporarily at Journey. Our positive for 2020 is that we got months of family time and memories that we never would have had we not been in a pandemic.
Thank you. Jana Caudill.
Hi, I'm Jana Caudill, and I have a 5th grader and a 1st grader at Woodman Roberts Elementary. And then we also have a 2-year-old. I guess our positive is just how connected our neighborhood was able to get through all this. And then my kids are super excited to be in person in school.
Jenny Rogers.
Hi. Wait, yes. Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm representing Ranch Creek Elementary, where my 3rd grader goes. I also have a 7th grader at Timberview and 2 at Liberty. And our positive is my oldest just got her driver's license last week, so now I'm not the only chauffeur in the family. So good times.
Jennifer Matthias.
Hello, I've got 3 kids. I've got a Rampart, Mountain Ridge, and I got a School in the Woods this year. I'm representing School in the Woods, and that is our positive, that he got in School in the Woods, and I'm thrilled to be a part of them this year.
There's a guest signed on, Julia.
Hello, I am Julia Van Wagenen, and I am helping represent Legacy Peak. And I have 2 boys that graduated from Rampart and 2 girls that are at Legacy Peak. And our positive is that probably the same as everybody said, is that we got extra family time. My husband got time off of work through all of it, and we were able to, he says it's the best year of his life, so.
Carrie Genoso.
Hi, I'm Carrie Genoso, and I'm representing Timberview. And I have a 2nd grader at Legacy. I have a 7th grader at Timberview and a 10th grader at Liberty. So that's lots of fun, lots of driving. Our positive is we finally got into our new house. So hopefully we can get everything moving and have a great school year.
Linda Buchanan.
Is it going to work?
It is working.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I am Linda Buchanan, and I am representing Chinook Trail Elementary. I have a junior at Pine Creek, a sophomore at Pine Creek, a 7th grader at Chinook Trail Middle School, and a 5th grader at Chinook Trail Elementary. And our positive, there's a couple of them. My husband's business has been able to survive thus far through all of this, which is good. And the great memories that we've created as a family.
Linda Killis.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me? It's a little bit laggy. Okay, perfect. My name is Linda Kylis, and I spent the last 2 years representing Foothills Elementary, and we have now moved on to Eagleview, and I'm now their representative. And a positive is that we had a fabulous camping trip in Colorado this summer, and I got a lot of gardening done.
Lori Yarborough.
Hello, good morning or afternoon, I guess. I am co-representing Academy International. Both of my children are actually at Journey 8 for a while. I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader, but I'm going to maintain my PTO board position at AIES and co-represent still. Oh, a positive. We have spent a lot of time in our camper this summer.
Michelle Roderick.
Hi,
Can you hear me? Hi. My name is Michelle Roderick, and I am representing High Plains Elementary, and I have 2 at Journey K-8 and 2 at Rampart right now. And it's been a crazy summer. We'll go with that.
Pam Heiler.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, great. I'm Pam Heiler. I am representing Chinook Trail Middle School. I have a 7th grader there. I have a junior at Pine Creek, and then my son graduated Pine Creek this past year. He is hopefully going to Grand Canyon in a few weeks. I guess our positive is Benjamin, we got to have a graduation ceremony, so that was good. And my husband retired after 26 years in the Air Force.
Don Pappas.
Hi, I'm Dawn Pappas. I'm representing Air Academy High School. I have a junior, my daughter's a junior there, and my son is a senior there. And good things are we got a lot of home projects done this summer.
Ruth Means.
I'm representing Edith Wolford, and I have a 3rd grader there. And a positive for us is that we spent the summer building a super awesome treehouse for the kiddo.
Sarah Hobart.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hobart, and I'm co-representing Academy International, where I have a 4th grader, but I also have a 6th grader at Mountain Ridge Middle School. So this summer we joined the many of getting a pandemic puppy. So we have been entertained and busy.
Savannah Harvey. I think it might be Kim Harvey. Kim Harvey. Okay, how about Sheila Jackson? Sheila Jackson. Okay, Summer Rakes. Which?
Hi, I'm here on behalf of Chinook Trail Middle School. I have a 7th grader there, and I have a sophomore at Pine Creek. And our positive would be that we had a senior last year at Pine Creek, and she graduated and had a ceremony, and despite all the mess. And also our husband retired from the military this year, so that was great.
Tracy Borland.
Hi, I'm representing Challenger Middle School. I have an 8th grader there. I also have a 5th grader at the Da Vinci Academy. And a positive is that we've been doing a lot of home projects and just spending time outside.
Okay, I have a couple of unknown users who are logged in, and also a phone number from area code 402. Is that someone? Okay, how about anybody I missed? If I missed you. Ann Hunt, did I miss you?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm Ann Hunt. I'm representing Antelope Trails. I've got a 3rd grader and a 5th grader there. And I also have a 9th and 11th grader at Discovery Canyon. Our positive this summer was that we got to use our son's 4th grade pass and went and explored at Sand Dunes, Mesa Verde, and Black Canyon of the Gunnison. So it was a great trip, and so happy to live in Colorado where we can experience this great state, great weather, beautiful mountains.
Anyone else who I may have missed?
I think you missed me. Katie Trevelyan.
I am representing Discovery Canyon High School. I have a freshman there. Number 20 we had a senior at DCC last year and he graduated and he went off to college and I have not died yet. And I thought I might when he left. So we're happy that I'm surviving.
Thank you all for that. That was very enlightening. I loved your positives. This year we have Will Temby as our Board of Education representative. Will, we're excited to have you here with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, the floor is mine?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Well, thanks to you and Diane for your leadership and to everybody on this call and the Parent Sounding Board. Communication is key to any great organization, and ASD 20 is a great organization, but you play a key role in communicating to the administration and then back to your schools about what's going on. And good communication is what's going to get us through these unusual times. And my positive is I'm confident we're going to get through these interesting times. But I am happy to be the representative of the Board of Education. I do, if you'll indulge me, I do have a PowerPoint presentation to stay on point, and Anne is going to help me. So, Anne, I think you're going to try to pull that up for everybody.
Yep.
And hopefully, by me talking, those of you who are on the phone, you'll be able to capture the essence of the presentation here. So I'll wait just a second here.
It's loading.
Okay. Yeah. So, Anne, I think we can just move to the next slide.
Okay. Oh, hang on. Okay, it has moved to the next slide on my computer. Hold on.
There we go. So I know many of you are veterans of the school district, but I thought I'd just give just a very brief overview of the board and its role. There are 5 elected directors who serve 4-year terms. A director can serve 2 successive 4-year terms. Currently, our board is made up of Karen Reynolds, who is the president, Doug Lundberg, vice president, Tom LaValle, treasurer, Heather Cloninger, and myself. Elections for the board are staggered every 2 years, odd year elections, and the next election is in next November after the presidential election this year. Karen Reynolds, Doug Lundberg, and Tom LaValle were voted into office in the 2017 election. So next year, their seats would be open unless they run for successive terms. And Heather Cloninger and I joined the board last year. We do employ a policy governance model, which I'll talk about in just a second. And we do oversee one employee, and that is Tom Gregory, who is on your screen there also. Next slide. So the policy governance model is one that many boards employ, but the Board of Education is the policy-making governing body of the district, and it employs the superintendent. That is the sole person that we supervise or oversee. We develop and adopt policies, curriculum, and adopt the annual budget. And we oversee facilities issues, not the operation thereof, but major capital projects. All of the operational decisions of the district are determined by the superintendent and his or her staff. The Board of Education is advised of all major decisions of the district and offers positive or constructive feedback as necessary. And at every meeting, we do monitor adherence to and recommend changes to all district policies and procedures through a regular review at Board of Education meetings. Next slide. Thanks, Ian. My background, just so you know, I moved to Colorado Springs in 1995, and I've been a parent in the district for the past 25 years. I've got 2 graduates of Liberty High School, 2 of Rampart, and a senior at high school. And my kids have attended Academy International, Explorer, Timberview, Challenger, and Mountain Ridge also. For a number of years, I served on the Mountain Ridge Middle School and Rampart High School accountability committees. Just before moving on to the Board of Education, I was the parent chair of the District Accountability Committee. And I also co-chaired the Yes on 3A Citizens Bond Committee in 2016 with Lori Uddenberg and Heather Henneman and other past members of the Parent Sounding Board also served on that committee. We called it the Dream Team because we got a $230 million bond issue passed with over 60% of the vote. So everybody's support was terrific. And I've also served on several other committees to include Growth and Capital Needs and the Certified Performance Evaluation Council. In terms of board members, 4 of us are still employed, and you can go to the next slide, Ann. 4 of us are still employed. Doug Lundberg, who served with distinction as a educator in the district, is retired, but many of us work. So currently, I do own and serve as managing partner of a staffing firm, which has offices in Colorado, Kansas, and Missouri. And above that, you can see some of the other positions I've held since I moved to Colorado in 1995. And I think we can go on to the next slide. So I wanted to share some of the Board of Education activities and then areas of focus since March of 2020. The Parent Sounding Board, I believe, Ann, last met on March 4th. And so there have been a number of intervening moments in history and meetings since then. And so I thought I'd get us caught up on what's occurred over the past few months. So the major activities of the Board of Education since the Parent Sounding Board last met, we've held 11 meetings to include the first virtual meetings in the history of D20. And normally with the cadence of meetings for the Parent Sounding Board, there'd only be 1 or 2 meetings in between Parent Sounding Board meetings. So the update from the Board of Education wouldn't be as voluminous as it is now. We also heard and responded to over 350 written public comments at Board of Education meetings. Those were in lieu of people standing at the podium for a live meeting. So we did allow people, since we did go to a virtual format, to submit written comments. And we read every single one of those. One meeting back in late July lasted 7 hours as we read over 250 comments from people. And then at the first meeting in August, there were another subsequent 80 comments put in by the public. And most of the public comments obviously are from people within the district, educators, parents, patrons of the district, expressing their opinions, which were varied and at times diametrically opposed to one another. But it was important for them to be heard. And Karen Reynolds, who is our board president, has responded to every single one of those public comments in writing. One thing that's very important to the board is to stay connected. And so just before things changed in March, we did conduct a linkage with high school student leaders where we were at the EAC, and we asked them a number of questions and rotated groups and got through all the leaders and the board just to hear what's going on. And that was illuminating. And then, as you know, social and emotional health is incredibly important to all of our kids. And so the board participated in a Sources of Strength Peer Leaders Roundtable on March 11th before things really changed. And next slide, Ann. Other things that we've done, normally we would do this in person, but as people move through the interview process, the board does have an opportunity to meet with principal finalists for our various schools. And so we conducted several virtual principal finalist interviews via Microsoft Teams. The board has work sessions at times to talk about budget or myriad other things. And we held 5 work sessions since March. We attended virtual graduations for Aspen Valley High School, the Village High School, and the Bridges program. And thankfully, and I really want to applaud Tom Gregory, Dr. Jim Smith, and the leadership team for holding on, and we were able to do in-person graduations at the very end of June. So Air Academy, DCC, Liberty, Pine Creek, and Rampart also all enjoyed some great weather and were able to have loved ones with them in the stadium. So that was a really nice week for the district. So I want to talk about some major areas of focus since March, not just activities, but clearly the preponderance of our time has been spent on the declaration of the COVID pandemic and the subsequent closure of schools in the last school year and the reopening of schools. And I'm not going to really elaborate on this, as Tom will have the floor and will be able to talk more specifically about reopening and kind of our current state of affairs. I do want to offer some praise to, again, Tom and his team, who've had to deal with incredible variables along the way and have just done a phenomenal job in getting this school district moving here. Another thing that was the result of the abrupt change that the pandemic represented was severe impacts to the global economy and the ripple effect to the national and regional economy. And so that has really impacted school funding for this year and potentially for subsequent years, depending upon economic recovery. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the adopted budget for the 2020-2021 school year. And the team did a tremendous job. Again, kudos to Tom, Becky Allen, and Brian Cortez of the finance staff for working us through and getting us with what is really the best solution. Tom can talk about the financial health of the district, but thankfully this district being strong had reserves, and we were able to get through this budget by invoking and using some of our reserves and Tabor Reserve, and hopefully we'll be able to replenish that in time. We did not exhaust the district's reserves, but we did dig into them. Another big issue that has come up, and I applaud the district for being prescient and thinking about this, but one thing that's very important is that we have a staff, particularly an educator staff, that is reflective of the mix of students and our student population. And there's work to be done, admittedly, in making sure that we have a diverse faculty, if you will. And so we did start a diversity council to look at that. Subsequent to that, we did get some comments from some past students that talked about, particularly in today's world where we're talking about Black Lives Matters and other voices. There are a number of people who talked about the fact that there may be some systemic racism in the district, and we're going to take that nose on. And again, kudos to Tom. He is looking at how we can, in the face of a pandemic and looking at financial resources, how can we really step up our effort and tackle this issue. Tom started some tremendous initiatives in his first year as superintendent. Some of those got deferred, if you will, because of the pandemic. And I'll let Tom talk about those at this meeting or subsequent meetings. But strategic planning and other initiatives, looking at our site-based model and how we can tighten that up. are two of the key initiatives there, but Tom has several other initiatives that he introduced last year. We spent a lot of time on building fund updates, obviously, with the advent of a $230 million bond issue and fairness formula dollars and capital money within the district. There's been a lot of activity, as everybody knows, in terms of either repairing or building new facilities in the district. And so we get updates every single meeting from Henry Wright-Wiesner and his team, and they're doing a phenomenal job, and most projects are being delivered on time and under budget. Next slide. Ian. And other things that we've been looking at, and again, we look at it from a more holistic view versus drilling down to each individual school, but we've been looking very closely at the character and climate survey data, student enrollment data, which is very important for per pupil funding for the district. The District Accountability Committee does a lot of work sanctioned by the, or charged by the Board of Education, and so they produce an annual report for all their activities, and some of you have served on the District Accountability Committee, and so you know that site plan reviews, priority resources, other things are looked at very closely on a more granular level by the DAC. We look at the adoption of future school year calendars, the hiring report for the school year. We got a briefing from Dr. Field on a dyslexia program initiative to really see if we can kind of bolster our resources in that area. Each year, the district attempts to send a team to benchmark other school districts and learn best practices in other areas. And so we spent time looking at the research and design team trip to Minneapolis this year. We heard from a few schools that proposed some curriculum changes, particularly at the secondary level, and much more. But I tried to wedge 11 meetings worth of information into a couple of slides here, so apologize for the brevity, but a lot's been going on. But again, the preponderance of our time has been very focused on the pandemic and its influence on the district. And I'm happy either through the chat feature or if you want to send an email to me as your liaison, happy to answer questions at any point in time. But I'm very proud to serve on this board as a 25-year veteran of this district. I selfishly believe it's the best school district in the state of Colorado for myriad reasons, and proud to serve on the board. And that's it, Heather and Diane. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. That was a wonderful briefing you gave us. Very enlightening. Sounds like there's a lot going on. Before I introduce Mr. Gregory, I just wanted to say that this meeting is being recorded. In case anybody has any questions about that, please feel free to email us as to why we decided to go that route. But this way, everyone can see the notes or refer back to it at any point in time. Also, all of your questions that are asked in the chat that are more of a general based questions, we're going to go ahead and ask those at the end of the meeting. And if you have any questions for Mr. Gregory, we'll ask those at the end of the meeting as well. For now, we're going to hear from Mr. Gregory himself. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Heather. And thank you and Diane both for volunteering. This is, just to make sure everybody's clear, an unpaid position, right? You're volunteering to help with all this. So thank you very much for doing this. As you know, the last 6 months have been quite challenging in many different aspects. But during this time, I'd like to thank everybody, all of you that are attending this meeting and our entire community for your understanding, support, grace, and flexibility as we have moved over the last 6 months and continue to for an indefinite period into the future. I'll take a few minutes here and in just a minute and share with you kind of the thoughts over the last couple months about why we are where we are. But But as Mr. Timby did, I also want to go back and talk just briefly, since the last time we met was in March, early March, just a couple big ticket items since then. First, as Mr. Timby mentioned, right after March, or I guess during March, we were building the budget, getting ready to propose a budget to the board for the current year. Just a couple highlights or lowlights, I guess, depending on your perspective. This year's budget includes a $32 million reduction from the state of Colorado due to the essentially the impact of COVID on the economy in the last quarter of the last fiscal year. And as Mr. Timby mentioned, that $32 million was, you may not see much of the impact of that out there because much of it was done either through one-time, and I'm going to use the word solutions in quotes because anything that's done one time is really not a solution, but it did buy us another year. And then also the planning of consuming some reserves, which none of us like to spend money from our savings accounts, but essentially that's what it's there for. You have reserves for rainy days, and certainly this was more than just a little bit of rain. And required, as I said, with a $32 million reduction in revenue, it required that. So as Mr. Timby said, it's not consuming all reserves. We've fortunately over the last 10 or so years have built up enough to get us through short periods of time. We could sustain a few years, but if this lasts for a long period of time, certainly we'll have to look more closely at the whole, everything we do in the district. So that's on the revenue side. Additionally, on the revenue side, not as a part of the planned budget, but as we're playing out now at the start of the school year, our budget assumed, I think 130 students growth from last year to this year. Frankly, that's not going to happen. And in fact, we will probably miss our budget projection for enrollment by several hundred students. Could be as high as more than 500 students. So on top of the $32 million I just mentioned, if we fall short of our enrollment projections by more than 500 students, you can multiply that each student times approximately $7,400, and that's the additional hit that we'll have to deal with as far as revenue. And then lastly, on the expenditure side, there's the cost of COVID has certainly been realized also. I'll give an example, just in Journey K-8 alone, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but we've had to hire approximately 80 additional staff to work the Journey K-8 enrollment. And then on top of that, approximately $750,000, $750,000 for curriculum purchases for the Journey K program also. So it's a great option for parents, but there's also, with as many times when with choice comes a little more expense too. So that all sounds like bad news, but you know what? We're going to get through it. Our lights are on, our doors are open. Hopefully soon. Well, certainly right now, teachers are in classrooms with kids, with elementary students, and soon we'll have teachers in classrooms with high school students in person, middle school and high school students in person also. Also, since last spring, a couple of you have mentioned graduations. That was quite the challenge this year also. I think we changed graduation plans 5 or 6 times, and as Mr. Timby thanked Dr. Smith, I would do the same. But ultimately, providing for a graduation ceremony that was certainly non-traditional, but we were able to recognize our graduates, and in fact, most of the time their parents, in a setting that was very much appreciated by the parents. And if you didn't know, the way it worked was graduates sat on the football field. It was outdoors at the District 20 Stadium. Graduates sat on the field with their parents. So the parents weren't in the stands. Parents were actually sitting shoulder to shoulder with their graduates on the field. And when their name was called, they got to stand up and be recorded along with their parents. And I know I did get, although it was non-traditional, several thank yous from parents saying, you know, what a maybe something you think about going into the future, because it was very cool to be able to sit with the graduate. Not sure the graduates liked it, but the parents liked being able to sit down with their graduate through the ceremony. So it ended up being a pretty positive experience. And I should say too, because this never gets recorded, but there was a lot of fear in the community and in the health department about holding graduations like that. If we have 300 graduates, that's close to 1,000 people all in one area, and you know the panic and fear that creates nowadays. We know of this many, 0 incidences with COVID as a result of one of our graduations, and we did 5 of them. So that's a piece of good news that I think, you know, the Gazette nor any of the media ever report on those kinds of things, but that's certainly positive. And then lastly, most importantly, probably for you now, is where we're at now, and that's planning for this year. That's been going on since middle of June. As you know, a survey was issued in June to parents, and we also surveyed staff. We got well over, the number that sticks in my head is well over 6,000 responses to the survey from parents, and well over half of the staff on what they forecasted or what they would like to see in returning to school this year. Again, in June was a very different environment than we ended in where we were at the end of July, when decisions had to be made. But essentially, that's where we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to share my screen here. And present to you what I presented to the board 2 weeks ago at their work
Is
session.
now joining.
And it's really about how we ended up where we are today. So I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. And Heather or Diane, please speak up if I'm taking too long, because I need parameters.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. So first of all, the plan that was created in early August, late July, considered all of many data points, thousands, including all the comments that Mr. Timby referenced earlier, emails, all sorts of inputs we got from parents, students, teachers, administrators, and our plan was developed then based upon 3 goals and balancing, and this is important, but best balancing those 3 goals. Those 3 goals were providing for the health and safety for students and staff, maintaining the highest level of education possible, and providing options or choices for students and parents. And those 3 are difficult to balance. If one becomes more of a focus, generally what happens is the other 2 are sacrificed a little bit. And that's eventually what happened with the secondary school students, because originally the plan that was communicated to the community did, I believe, best balance these 3 components. But when we delayed the start of the hybrid model for secondary students, certainly that removed options for students and parents, possibly impacted the educational value, because everybody had to move online, but it did increase the safety and health of students and staff. So that's an example of how those 3 goals interact with one another. A little bit on each one of those. Regarding safety and health, we're trying to distance students in classrooms as best we possibly can. Teachers have reconfigured classrooms, and if you have elementary students, you've probably seen some of that. And we're asking staff to distance themselves from one another as best possible also. As you know, there's facial covering requirements by the state for students or for all residents that are 11 years old or greater. So that really means we've translated that to be 6th graders and above, and then certainly encourage highly the use of face coverings at the elementary school level also. There are medical exemptions, so if a doctor provides something to the school district or the school that exempts a student, they certainly don't have to wear a face covering. And then in many of our classrooms, we've told teachers that shields, the face shields, can be temporarily used as substitutes for face coverings. And as you could probably see or know, that at early grades, when students are learning how to read, write, and communicate, the teacher wearing a mask sometimes is detrimental to that learning. So if a teacher could wear a shield so that students can see facial expressions, they can see mouth movements, many times that is extremely helpful. And in some cases, it may be that a student wears a shield so that the teacher can see the same kinds of things in a student's face. With regard to hygiene, we're washing hands, sanitizing hands, instructing students on how to sneeze and cough properly in this environment. I've been out to nearly all the schools, all the elementary schools at this point, and every time I've gone into a school, there's at least one classroom and a restroom washing hands. So it is happening. Other items, in many of our elementary classrooms, there are plexiglass, I'll call them shields or barriers between students, especially classrooms that have tables instead of desks. It's not a substitute for any of the distancing or facial covering requirements, but it does provide another layer of risk mitigation. We're using outdoor settings as much as possible, trying to share items or limit the sharing of items as much as possible, and in some cases not at all. As many of you know as parents, limiting the number of visitors in buildings, certainly no large group gatherings, and then the air handling systems at all the schools are pulling in more. The mixture of air has changed, so more outdoor air is being pulled in, and for longer periods. We have a sustainability plan in the school district, and that sustainability plan has always called for air handling systems to be shut down when schools are not open to save energy and dollars. So, for example, a school's air handling system may shut down, or in the past would have shut down maybe at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and stayed off until 5 o'clock the next morning. Well, that's no longer the case. Air handling systems are running 24/7 to make sure air is continually circulated. As a part of that, filters are also being changed more frequently. With regard to the educational value, this is a difficult one. I can tell you my personal feel. I've been asked many times, why is it okay for elementary school students to be in school in person if it's not, and it's not okay for secondary students? I'll be very frank with you. I do not believe that it is appropriate for especially our youngest learners, kindergarten, first, second, third graders, to be learning how to read, write, and communicate in an online or remote environment. So that part of that was just the educational value of having students in a classroom with teachers when they're at those really young age levels. So that's what's happening at the elementary level. It's every student every day with all of those safety protocols, or as best we can put them in place, are in place. For secondary schools, we introduced the hybrid concept, which is essentially splitting students in half, assigning group A to 50% of the students and group B to the other 50%. And while I'll say group A students are attending in person, the group B students would be at home attending the same classes in a synchronous classroom environment, or they're attending essentially the classroom remotely, like they're doing today, but today it's 100% attending remotely. Whereas we move into the future, it'll be a portion will be attending remotely and a portion will be attending in person. A positive about the hybrid also is it allows for a bit more seamless transition in and out of, we'll call them quarantines, which will be a part of our reality moving forward. But if we have to move back and forth from in class and out of class, students are used to and teachers are used to how that works. Synchronous classrooms at the secondary level provide for, this is really comparing to last spring. We wanted some accountability both for staff and students. There's a time and place for staff and students to be every day when school is in session, essentially running through their regular daily schedule. We didn't want to do the idea of, some school districts have implemented a hybrid option or a hybrid plan, but the students who are not attending in person are not attending at all. And we didn't want that to happen, because then when the two cohorts reverse and the students who are at home are now in class, what that would require is the teacher to duplicate that lesson over again. So essentially, at the end of the day, it reduces instructional time and learning time by 50%, and we didn't want that to happen. And then it allows us to respond to exposures or outbreaks, kind of back to the more seamless transition comment. And then there was an online option, which for kindergarten through 8th grade was our Journey K-8 school, which is already in existence. And then we learned for last spring that an online environment is certainly not appropriate nor the best for many of our students with special needs. So they are, regardless of level, our students with special needs are in school, in person, daily, today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I think you're aware of these options we presented. Elementary is in person, or it's Journey K-8. At the secondary school, so middle schools and high schools, there's a hybrid component. Part of that hybrid is a synchronous attendance that is remotely attending the same class. If students want to, they can attend school only that way. In other words, they can attend class just like they are today going into the future. They don't have to go physically to a school. They can continue to attend class remotely. And then at the secondary level, actually at the high school level, Accelerate is the completely online option, and that's kind of a third-party source, if you will. Special populations are in person. They are also can attend in a hybrid environment. Some of them have medical conditions that don't allow them to attend in person, and they also have the synchronous option. Then, as always, many of our parents this year have taken advantage of just choosing to go the homeschool route for at least this period of time. As you know, on August 10th, we sent out a message to the entire district that says, well, time out, we're changing the plan. And essentially by changing the plan, we meant we're going to delay the implementation of the hybrid model at the secondary level. So at the elementary school, there were no changes. At the secondary schools, the hybrid, which includes the in-person option, was delayed until September 14th. The synchronous or remote only option is going to continue through September 11th. That was the original plan, and that still is our plan. And then the hybrid, the mix of students being in school as well as students being at home will start on September 14th. And the online option of Accelerate still has not changed. And with special populations, there's no changes after the 14th either. So why? Why was it that on August 10th, I decided, and I should make that clear too, as Mr. Timby said earlier, our board doesn't vote on these kinds of things. It's not their decision. They, by policy governance, delegate that decision of operating the school district to me. So if anybody wants to complain, they need to complain to me, not to Mr. Timby or our board members. I certainly kept them involved and informed about what was happening and why my decisions were as they were. But essentially, at the end of the day, if I'm going a different direction or the superintendent of this district goes a different direction than the board, then they handle that through the evaluation process. And essentially, if I'm not doing what they think is the right thing, they look for another superintendent. So I just want to make sure, I feel bad that the board's getting beat up for some of these things, and it's really my decision. And I own that decision, and at this point, I still support that decision. So on August 10th, we met with the health department that afternoon. They said they would support whatever we decided. And when I say we, I mean all the superintendents in El Paso County. and different districts are different sizes, different communities have decided to do different things. But when we looked at the data on that day and listening to what the health department was saying about the data, we decided that it was best if we left elementary as planned and delayed the start of the hybrid option at the secondary level until September 14th. So why was it that elementary didn't change? Per the El Paso County Department of Health and other sources, I know there's been news stories that challenge this a little bit lately, but elementary age children were not transmitting the virus at the same rates as teens and adults transmit the virus. Therefore, it was a lower transmission rate at the elementary level and not, not as risky for elementary students or staff to return. And then, as I said earlier, I just disagree completely that our youngest learners of kindergarten, first, second, third, even fourth graders can learn best in an online environment. So I wanted them to be in school with their teachers. Then, same question, why did we change the secondary school? We didn't change it. Why did we delay it? Same idea. El Paso County, the health department sees what I've called on the slide tweens and teens as transmitting the virus at similar rates to adults. I did ask at that meeting that day with the health department to please help with what metrics should we be looking at? What are the metrics that say go or no go on returning secondary students to class? And I was told to look at three metrics. The first is the 14-day rolling average of new cases per 100,000. And on that day, it was 138.2, which was well above what's defined as the high threshold as determined by the Colorado Department of Health. So we were, if we compare back to last April and May, when schools were closed, it was at 50 per 100,000 or less, and we were sitting at 138.2. So part of the reason for the delay was let's allow the transmission rate to hopefully reduce over time. This was prior to the governor's facial covering mandate. But at this point, data is better. I think as of today, I was looking at, we're around 70 in El Paso County as of today, compared to 138.2 on August 10th. So the idea was that in a kind of a conceptually, can we hold out secondary students until the transmission rates come down to a level that's at or approaching what they call medium transmission rate or low transmission rate. Medium is defined by in Colorado as 50 new cases per 100,000 on a 14-day rolling average. This is just the data. If any of you are familiar with the county's data dashboard, this just gives a visual for what I just said. In April and May, you can see the rolling, this is the 14-day incidence per 100,000. So it's an average, but it's a 14-day average. You can see where we were at our highest points in April were far less than where we were. This yellow dot represents August 10th, the day the decision was made. And this red line represents that high mark of 100 cases or incidents per 100,000. When I mentioned the 50 and the 25 earlier, the medium and low rates, the health department suggested that they would be more comfortable with returning secondary students to school if we were approaching, either at or approaching that yellow line. And again, this is from August 18th. You can see the date, the day before the board meeting where I presented this. But on August 18th, you could see that we had already declined quite a bit. And in fact, today, when I looked this morning, we were at about 70. And so this line is continuing, or this curve is continuing to decline, which is exactly what we were hoping for back on August 10th. Another metric that they said to use was the what they call the positivity rate, which again is a 14-day average. And you can see some of the examples. I just matched these up with the same colors that were on this slide. July 11th, July 29th, August 10th, and August 18th. And the goal here, or the threshold, is something below 5%. And again, as we've continued since July 29th, which was kind of at the height of the transmission, we continued to decline. On August 18th, we were at 4.85. And as of this morning, we're at about 3.6. So it's all continuing to go in the right direction. Then the third metric they said that was important was hospital capacity. And inside of that, intensive care capacity. And at this time, hospital capacity is not an issue in El Paso County, nor is, there's lots of capacity, I'll put it that way. So that's not a concern at this point. As long as we can keep going in this county in the same direction, things are looking good for the return of students. So this was, again, 2 weeks ago. What factors will be considered in determining if we return on September 14th? And I've just kind of restate here what I just said. Cases per 100,000 on a 14-day rolling average basis is trending below 100 towards 50 or 75. The 14-day positivity rate is below, this is the test positivity rate, is below 5% and either stable or decreasing. Our hospital capacity is not an issue. Exposures and outbreaks in our schools that are open stays at a minimum. The county and state, the county or state, does not return to a stay-at-home designation. Right now, we're at safer at home. If we were to go to a stay-at-home designation, all schools would be offline, just like we were last spring. So we want to stay away from stay-at-home and stay in safer at home, or even better, the protect your neighbor. If we can stay there, then again, students will be able to return on the 14th. And then, of course, if there's no directives from outside of the district saying that we can't return to school. Just to be clear, I want kids back in school just as much as anybody else does. I want them in school as soon as possible and as much as possible. But I also want it to be in a safe, compliant, and most importantly at this point, sustainable way. And I'll talk just about that in just a minute. Some other updates, and Heather, if you're okay, I'm going to talk about Journey K-8 now, since I have it on the radar screen and I have the floor, that we can skip it later on. But as many of you know, we've had some challenges with regard to Journey K-8. The enrollment just exploded right as I guess I'll call it window to make a decision for parents. As that window started to close, over a 3-day period, we went from somewhere around 600 enrollments at Journey K-8 to well over 2,000 enrollments. And this was a week before school was supposed to start. So we had lots of staffing issues. We had to get those kids registered in Infinite Campus, which for several thousand or a couple thousand students takes a while. We had to get our curriculum ordered through the curriculum provider for Journey K-8. And then the biggest challenge was hiring, training of staff and getting students on board. Those have all provided some significant challenges. And those of you who are a part of Journey K-8 right now probably know what challenges I'm talking about. And that is, the way I would say it is, school is still slowly starting. They haven't really hit the first day of full onboard school yet. And in fact, this morning or today and tomorrow at Pine Creek High School are handing out hundreds and hundreds of devices to students to have access to the Journey K program. So with that, I've reached the end, at least of what I was going to say. I don't know, Heather, if you want to give some time now to answer questions, I'd be happy to, since we have a little bit of time, or we can wait till the end.
Now is fine. We do have a few that were submitted via the chat.
Thank you. And I don't have my chat box open, so if you could read those to me, Heather, that'd be great.
I can, yes. The first one is, I know that it was necessary but gut-wrenching decision to cancel High Trails this year. Has any thought been given to trying to reschedule this once-in-a-lifetime experience, perhaps allowing the kids to do it in the 7th grade?
Interesting. The short answer is not that I know of. We haven't looked into that. Since we do High Trails through the one place, the Sanborn camps, it's probably a little bit challenging just to get on a schedule because we're not the only school district that uses Sanborn camps. In fact, I believe that principals even looked into moving it to this spring, which wasn't an option because they're already filled up. I think they try to fill out well over a year in advance so that they know what the schedules are. But I will certainly bring that up and see if it's a possibility. I know that's not a good answer, but it's the answer I have because, as I said earlier, it wasn't something that we had really considered at this point.
Our next question is students and parents want to know, will we ever have snow days again for the middle and high school?
So what's the right answer to that? Is it yes or is it no? I will tell you my thoughts on it. Last year we had looked into, Dr. Smith had looked into an option for secondary students, an alternative to snow days. So when there was a snow day and students stayed home, could they still be in a learning environment to where we wouldn't have to count it as a snow day on our calendar? So in other words, we'd receive credit as a school and school district for kids attending. And we looked into this. It was kind of a slow approach to it. Well, then all of a sudden last spring hit and it went from a slow approach to a very fast approach. And I would say that if we could avoid, the idea of a snow day will obviously still happen because there's going to be times when it's not safe for kids and staff to drive to school. But if staff can teach from home and students can attend from home and there's a schedule to follow, we could call it an e-learning day or something like that, snow day with e-learning for high school and middle school students, to where we would still get credit for going to school that day. And what that means is at the end of the year, when we're all wondering what the last day of school is going to be, because of the snow days, we wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Because we know what the last day of school is going to be, because we know that every day that's a school day on the calendar will be a school day. And for elementary students, we wouldn't do that. That would be what we've always known as a typical snow day for elementary students. But that's because the requirements for time and attendance or days for elementary students are less than what they are for, we meet those requirements easier at the elementary level than we do at the secondary level is the way that would work. So is the idea of a snow day still there? Yes, from a travel standpoint, but from a standpoint of still attending school, we could still attend school. And in fact, over the next couple weeks, since we're now in September, getting close to October, in the next few weeks, our high school and middle school principals will be discussing, excuse me, what those schedules might look like if it's designated an e-learning day or something like that on a snow day or a weather cancellation day.
Our next question is, how can we serve on the Diversity Council?
Good question. So Dr. Peak is kind of leading that charge with the support of several other cabinet members. The first step is we're going to use what we call collaborative input model in the school district. So it's a formal process that gives a charge to a committee. It talks about what membership will look like on that committee, what a timeline would look like. It's just it kind of lays out the process. Once that's done, then Dr. Peak will send out an application, we'll call it, or an interest. If you're interested in serving, then you would essentially apply to be on the committee. My sense is there will be hundreds of people wanting to serve on the committee. It will be a large committee, but not of hundreds, probably in the 40 to 50 range. And to make sure that we've covered all areas, meaning demographic areas of the district, including geographic, and we're talking about diversity, that all populations are represented, that will go out to the community. So be looking for an invitation. It'll probably go out through something like a 20 alert. So be looking for that if you're interested in serving. That communication would tell you how to apply or get involved.
Great. Our next question is, how many kids moved to the Journey K-8 elementary versus the middle school?
I wish I had the numbers sitting in front of me. It's a far more elementary. I want to say that it's, the last time I looked, it was about 75%, 25%. So if we go back, this would be about a week ago now, I think we're at about 1,900 students at the elementary level and 500 or so at the middle school level. And of course, we're still, that's still changing a little bit day by day. Some folks have decided at the elementary level that, maybe going to the elementary school wasn't as bad of an idea as they thought. So now they want to reverse their decision and instead of going to Journey 8, go back to the elementary school. But also I think it's important to understand the students who left to go to Journey K-8, we wanted that to be an option for parents. But what that's also done is allow the elementary schools to not fill those seats. We've reserved those seats, which has caused consternation for some others in our community, but we've reserved those seats for when the students come back, whenever that is. But in the meantime, those seats are now vacant. So a class that may have had 25 in it at one time may now have 19 or 20 in it. And it allows the teacher then to spread those kids for us to meet our distancing challenge also. So it serves two roles. And what we've asked is for folks who made the Journey K decision to at least stay with that for 9 weeks through the first quarter and then decide, because data will continue to change on the virus. People will get more comfortable or more uncomfortable, whichever it may be, with the in-person elementary school. They may not like the online component that's through Journey K-8. So, but instead of having kids shuffle back and forth, we'd like to do it at the end of each quarter. But those are rough numbers. Dr. Smith just handed me a sheet here. Looks like about a little over 1,800 at the elementary school and a little under 500 at the middle school. So it's about the same ratio. But Journey K-8's traditionally had about 170 students, and now they have nearly 2,500 students. So that's been a challenge.
The next two questions are linked, so I'm just going to combine them. It says it's likely too early to ask this question, but if the spring shows a healthy, non-COVID safe place, will you entertain the option to go back to non-delayed Wednesdays and or full-time in person for all levels? And at what point will you consider going back full-time versus hybrid?
That's a good question. It's a little out further than what I've considered for right now because we're worried about this implementing the hybrid piece. But conceptually or philosophically, I would say this. I want, as much as anybody, I want our schools to operate as normal as possible, as soon as possible. So whenever that is, we will continue working with the health department. And we should know too that all summer long, up until last week, superintendents in El Paso County have met weekly. Every Wednesday, we have a meeting just to talk with each other about whether it's different challenges that are happening or challenges that one district's facing and another district has already resolved or addressed. It's just a good network to have those discussions. Since El Paso County is very interconnected, we are District 20, there's no doubt, but we don't live in a bubble. And there are connections to other school districts, whether it's by where folks work, even things like club sports or sporting events and those kinds of things, churches. There's interconnection across our community. And I'm not saying it has to be this way, but it is much easier for our entire community if, especially the major school districts, the larger ones, do the same thing at the same time. For example, many of our teachers have kids and they don't live in District 20. They live in another school district. So if another school district is continuing with an online or remote environment, but we're going with an all in-person environment, it creates a significant challenge for that teacher now because they have students at home, but they're supposed to be at work. And I know that that happens across all industries, but it's really important that we have teachers in our classrooms. And if teachers are forced to make a decision to quit or come to work, we really want them to come to work. So if there's anything we can do to support and make sure they can come to work, that's what we will do. But you know, it could be the spring, it could be something earlier. Who knows about a vaccine, when that could happen or does happen, and how many people will take advantage of that, and how much that changes the game is a question. You know, I would love to think it's maybe pie in the sky thinking, but could it be early in the second semester? Does it have to wait till the spring? Is it going to be all next semester? Those are questions we don't know, but I'd love to do it as soon as possible. As some of you may know, the State Athletic Activities Association, CHASA, moved all but 4 sports from this fall to next semester. So they didn't cancel them, but for example, the football season that was supposed to be happening right now has been moved to start in late February, I believe. And many of the other fall sports have been moved to late February. So, you know, not that that's a driving force in the decision, but it is an important chance for kids to be involved in somewhat a normal life. And if we can make that happen, you know, if going to school can become more normal at that time, that would be great also. But you know, there's also some natural breaks in the year. You know, the beginning of the second semester is a natural break. Probably the next one after that is like a spring break time frame. Not that, again, it doesn't have to happen on those breaks, but those become kind of natural places to try to reevaluate decisions.
The next question is regarding the October count. When the October count occurs, will the per student funding stay with the individual school or to the district? And what about the Journey K-8 students who are present at Journey for the October count, but then return to their home school after the first quarter?
Yeah, whoever asked that just brought up one of the other challenges with this whole thing, right? I don't have all the answers to that question yet, but what we can assure is that schools will have what they need to function. For example, the Journey K-8 situation, they don't have $750,000 in their school budget to buy curriculum for the enrollment explosion. That's being handled by the district. Normally, they would buy their own access to curriculum, but in this case, that obviously couldn't happen. So we've helped out with that. Certainly, schools don't pay for the salaries and benefits of their staff. The district is obviously taking care of that at Journey K. But some of the other questions about what if those kids come back after the October count to their school, will the school be credited then? Will their brick and mortar school be credited with some financial piece? And I would say that we'll make sure that something's worked out so that it's fair to everyone.
And we noticed that the turf in the D20 stadium was pulled up. Assuming new turf is coming in, is that correct?
We're going to play on dirt. No, I'm kidding. Both. I see some of your faces. As Mr. Temby said earlier, that's part of the bond expenditures. Was to redo the fields at both schools. So Pine Creek, so Air Academy chose to do theirs on their own. Well, that was now like 2 years ago, I think, a year and a half ago. So Air Academy's is new. They chose to spend some of their fairness formula dollars to do theirs, essentially not to wait for the district and take it upon themselves to do it, which is great. Then Pine Creek and the District 20 Stadium at Liberty are both being redone. The turf is being replaced at both those from the bond dollars, not from annual operating dollars. In addition to that, the Pine Creek field will also be improved to become more like, can be used more like a stadium, so that when kids, we can schedule more events there that have adequate seating. It's not going to be as big seating capacity as what's at Liberty. That'll be the main stadium, but we still need, we've got enough schools now where we need a second venue to be able to host some of the varsity and junior varsity events. So yes, it will be replaced. It won't stay dirt.
Why did the district make the decision to have parents do a health check daily versus a temperature check at the school prior to entry?
That's a good question, and that's one we struggle with. I'm not a medical expert. I'm an educator, so we rely a lot on the county health departments, and you'll see that's again one of the, I guess I'll call it, frustrating components of this whole ordeal, is that different things are happening in different school districts. So why is it that District A is doing something and District B is not, and so on and so on? I would say this: my discussions with the medical director and the deputy medical director at the health departments are that the temperatures are one component, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but what I heard them say, not only one component, but the most unreliable of the components, and that a temperature by itself does not say much at all, especially the forehead scanners when it's really hot outside or really cold outside, or you've been standing out talking to your friends for 30 minutes before you come into the building and the sun's been shining on your forehead, or it's freezing cold outside. You get my point. That does play with the temperature. The other component is then so what? So a student comes into the building with a temperature that reads greater than 100.4. There has to be another symptom that goes along with it. And who's going to make that determination? The security officer at the door, the principal, the assistant principal, a teacher. Again, these aren't medical experts, and it makes it very difficult. So we think it's better for parents to know their children, and when their children are acting differently or running a fever or have multiple symptoms, than it is for students. Now that's a trust issue, right? There's no doubt about it. That's a personal responsibility issue, and we're relying upon our community. This includes our staff, by the way. We're relying upon them to self-evaluate for staff and for parents to help with their kids every day to say, you know what, it's probably best that you stay out today. Because what happens is if they go to school, it's not just that child. And believe me, we've learned this over the last 8 days at the elementary schools. If a child goes to school and displays symptoms at school, we're essentially, there's a whole flow chart out there at the state level that we have to follow. What that really means is it's not just that student that's going to go home. It's that student and anybody they've interacted with is going to be going home to be quarantined for either 10 or 14 days. And that's what becomes the challenge. And that goes for staff members also. If a staff member comes to school and they end up being symptomatic, then that's why you see these numbers that are reported in the media that District 20, a school in District 20 is, has 16 people quarantined. That does not mean 16 people have COVID. That means that 16 people were exposed to somebody that had symptoms. We've had one positive test since around the weekend before school started to now. But we've had dozens and dozens of quarantines. The test results on all of those so far have come back negative, but it does provide a pretty significant disruption to a classroom and to certainly a family schedule when you get noticed at 5 o'clock in the evening that your child can't go to school the next day or for the next X number of days, and all of a sudden your schedule and everything's turned upside down. And then 3 days later, they're told that they can go back because a test was administered and it came back negative. So it just provides for a lot of disruption. What I said earlier about my concern has shifted from when we can bring students back to can we keep them back? That's going to be the more significant challenge now going forward, is making sure that we can keep our staff and keep our students in school, in person, when they're supposed to be, just because of the symptoms. And effectively, if you look at the list of symptoms, they're the same symptoms for the common cold, for folks who have allergies, a whole spectrum of symptoms or of illnesses associated with those same symptoms. So it's a long answer to the question about temperature checks, but that's kind of where we're at with it. Certainly the schools have the ability to do that on an individual basis. That's one of the, if a teacher sends a student to the office because they are looking ill or feeling ill, certainly temperature checks are something that's done at that point. And the other piece is the logistics of, you know, some of our high schools are going to have 800 students showing up on the same day. How do you have to you have to distance them. They can't aggregate or congregate in large groups, yet they're all kind of hitting the doors at a very similar time. How do you do that in an efficient way that's still meaningful, and it's not just checking a box that we did it?
We have one more question before we'll move on to Ms. Tanya for the legal update. The question is, it seems that some of the landscaped areas of the schools have been left unattended during COVID or over the summer. For instance, the grass is nearly dead at Legacy Peak and the weeds are adult knee high. Do you have any plans to deal with this soon?
What I would say is please report those to make sure the principal knows about it, first of all. The principal can, that's the fastest way to get it resolved, is let the principal know so that the principal can report it to our maintenance department, and generally it's taken care of within 24 hours. But the short answer to the question is no. Our maintenance department was not shut down during COVID. Their priorities shifted to do some things that they otherwise couldn't do last spring. But at this point, when students are back or about to come back, I'll call it maintenance of the school grounds should be just as it was before. So I don't have plans to do it, but if you can contact your principal, or if nothing else, if you shoot me an email, I'll forward it to our maintenance director and make sure that it gets done.
Okay.
And if Heather, if that's
Yeah.
it, next, I just don't want to scare Tanya. Next on the agenda is Ms. Kuzer.
Oh, goodness, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I had it all lumped together under your presentation. I apologize.
They'll have to do it in short order, but since I took all their time up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm Shelley Kuzer, and I'm the Chief Information Officer. It's nice to meet you all virtually. And today I wanted to kind of just share a little bit on the updates. I'm going to share my PowerPoint here, just to kind of share what we have done kind of in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And before I start, I really have to say, you know, the bond really afforded us a nice opportunity. So as we're talking about positives, I have to kind of go back there because yes, COVID has not been a great thing for 2020, but with the planning of the bond, we really were able to ensure that we had some tools that other districts didn't necessarily have. So we implemented Schoology, and this last year, 1920, was our first full year of implementation. Additionally, you know, we were leveraging our Microsoft enterprise tools, but also just really it shows that we have such a supportive community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kind of start with what we call the end in mind. And our goal is to ensure that we are supporting our teachers and staff to the best that we possibly can. And as we started to look at, you know, synchronous classrooms, I'm going to talk kind of about the support of synchronous classrooms, but just to give you an idea of what this really looks like when we're talking synchronous, we wanted to make sure that the support was, let's start simple. Let's not get too elaborate. There's going to be teachers that are at all levels of technology competencies. And we wanted to provide them an opportunity to feel confident as they start their synchronous journey. So as we look at this is a very simplistic picture, but it just shows that how a synchronous classroom, when you have students who are remote, they would be, the teacher is basically that facilitator. So they would be showing their, the projector would basically show the class their material. And if they're showing their screen, just as we are right here, the students at home are also going to see it. The one thing that we really felt strongly about is as we start to look at tools that they needed is to make sure that they had a speaker phone, conference phone, basically. So you had that microphone and you have the ability for that to really be for the kids in the classroom as well as those at home to participate in the online dialogue. We also provided them, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but we provided some basic troubleshooting guides because, as you all know, and I think I've even seen a couple of folks that they kept getting kicked off because we know home Wi-Fi's can be somewhat problematic too. So how is it that they can help their students? And really, it's about learning from each other and sharing the success stories. So, and definitely asking for help. So as we were talking a little bit about this, these e-meet speakers, with the COVID money, we were able to purchase 1,000 of these e-meet speakers and provide those to the teachers. These are it's a little tiny portable speaker microphone, and they really do work very well. Obviously, you have to speak into them, and masks make it somewhat difficult because it's just the nature of where we are right now. But I do believe that we've used them even for some of our meetings at the EAC, and they work very well. The other purchase that we made was we purchased 600 teacher computers because we found that there were some teachers that had computers that were at the end of life or that they needed to have, they were using a student computer. That's not an ideal situation when you're really talking about having to do remote learning. They needed the hardware to support that. So these came in actually, and this is just kind of, I should have said I was going to do some show and tell with pictures, but these came in the first, I think it was the 10th of August, and we had them in schools that following week. So there was about 600 there. The other thing that we had talked a little bit, and I know Tom had mentioned this too, computers for Journey K-8. Well, with the explosion of their enrollment, we really needed to pull from other school districts other schools, because we do have an order in for devices. However, it's not going to be here until probably sometime in December, just as everybody is, going through the process of ordering equipment. And I'm sure you've probably even found that yourself if you've been in the market for computers lately. They're kind of few and far between. So this is just a representation of some of those computers that we received. And to kind of give you an idea, for Journey K-8, we needed another 900 computers. These computers right here that are in this picture, this is 350 computers. So we have more than that, and I can attest to that because today I stopped by Pine Creek as they were doing the handout. This was what was shipped to Pine Creek. So over the last 3 weekends, the tech department, they've really been working with the school techs to get machines re-imaged, wiped down. We know that we have to make sure that, we're not only safe on the cyber side, but we're also safe ensuring that things are clean. So as Tom had also mentioned, looking at the laptop pickup and distribution schedule, this is what's happening today at Pine Creek. And I have to say, knock on wood, because anytime we say something, things could always change, but it's going very well. And I know today's kind of a lighter day. We wanted to see where we were as far as, what it would look like, because we've never done this before. We've never distributed 900 laptops in a 3-day or a 2.5-day time period. The other thing that we did in March is to ensure that we had hotspots for those families that didn't have internet access. So when we had the stay-at-home order, we had ordered 100, not knowing kind of where we would even be as well, 100 hotspots that were checked out to families. And during the spring semester, we utilized about 60%, because what we found is that more students than we thought would have access to internet at home. The other thing we did is we extended the Wi-Fi at 3 schools for the parking lot. So as students and parents or even staff needed to go, if they had to reset a password, if they had to get updates on their computer, they couldn't get in the building, this was another alternative for them. Additionally, and I failed to mention this at the very beginning, my department, we have 3 sub-departments. The first department is our infrastructure services and support. So basically, anything that runs, makes the network run, all of the Wi-Fi, that is Mr. Scott Harrison, who is taking care of that. There's also the digital integration services, and that's Mrs. Lori Hartman. She manages really kind of that integration between the tech folks and the teachers to support their needs, and definitely works with the Learning Services Department on the curriculum side, but we really are about the making sure that the tools, that the staff can use the tools. So with also some of the purchases that we've done, we have a lot of sessions that are recorded, just like this, you know, with Microsoft Teams. We have a tool called My VR Spot. Some of your students might also be using that. But it gave us the opportunity to provide resources in a timely manner. If we get new staff, we have all of these resources that staff can watch, you know, as they need them. Because I think that as adult learners too, we know that time is limited, but it's that just-in-time training to make sure that we can have that ability. We also have an e-learning course in ASD 20. We've got some Schoology courses, and Office 365, which is heavily used right now, and coming soon, putting together kind of that advanced scaffolding of courses for e-learning 2.0, because really this is something everybody's learning, and we're all on that same journey. As I'd mentioned, you know, we are using Teams right now. The board had also started to use the live events when we all had to go home. So this was another way to capitalize on the investment of Microsoft, but also we now have the ability within the boardroom to do a lot of live streaming, which is something we never had before. So, you know, it pushes everybody into that uncomfortable zone of, let's think about how we're doing things a little bit different, but it's okay. It actually allows us to, you know, have the patrons be able to watch remotely if that's what they choose. And I know Mr. Gregory had also done a lot of the live events as town halls that were moderated as well. Also, you know, in normal years, it's busy for the help desk, but this year we have seen twice the amount of traffic on help desk tickets. And these are just the tickets that come in. And schools are helping us, you know, get this taken care of, but that's not even the phone calls. And I know many of you may even have sat on the phone call. We've got 3 techs that answer the phones scattered throughout the day. So I appreciate your patience, because we understand there's a lot of need, especially around password resets. So just wanted to kind of share what's happening in the landscape. And then the last department I didn't mention is Mr. Kevin Kronk, and he's the director of our application and data services. So his department really is working behind the scenes to make the products talk. So we know that we have Schoology, we know that we have Google Suite, we know that we have Infinite Campus, but really and truly this slide shows all the integrations that we've done so that we can have either single sign-on, or the bigger part is to save teachers time so they don't have to enter in the roster if they're using a tool. It automatically takes that roster information from Infinite Campus and puts it into these tools. So I'm happy to share it, and of course Anne will be able to share this as well, but just wanted to kind of give you a sense of what the IT department, you know, has been doing. and over the last few months. And I am certainly open for questions if anybody has any questions in the chat.
We do not have any questions in the chat at this time.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Shelley, for all that information. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Dr. Jeremy Kosluk, the Director of Learning, Professional Learning. I can talk today. I'm sorry, guys. He's going to talk a little bit about the asynchronous and synchronous learning.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me join the team today. I do have a question about timing and pace. I don't know, I know we're running a little late on time, so Heather, I don't know if you have some direction for me on whether I should go ahead and present and share some of the things that are connected already with what Shelley and with what Mr. Gregory had said.
If you would, please, just a few minutes at least. We're very interested in your topic. It's completely my fault. I misread the agenda and I thought that Mr. Gregory had the entire hour to speak, so that's my fault. Please, would you share some information with us?
Yeah, sure thing. And thanks again for having me. I appreciate that. You've done a nice job setting kind of the stage for some things around rolling with the changes, right? So I'm new to the district, and I've appreciated the welcome and really the nice steep learning curve with jumping in the middle of professional learning, knowing we had very little amount of time to adjust and get ready for some of the hybrid learning structures that we've helped schools and teachers build out. Shelley really mentioned some great things, so she's a nice setup, because what we've emphasized is a need for both a technology side, getting the tools in place, and then an instructional integration side, and what that looks like. So our teams in curriculum and instruction and learning services have worked very closely with IT in a way. I think that it forced us to work closer together very quickly, which is a good thing. But I just want to give props to those teams for supporting and doing our best to get professional learning to educators. So what we have worked with, and I'll just state a couple things. I know I gave some slides, but I'd rather talk if that's okay, and then point to some things as we go. So we really worked collaboratively with school-based personnel as quickly as we could to flesh out how this might look in the classroom setting. And our focus was on secondary to start, and looking at what are some technology challenges we know we're going to have, and what are some instructional challenges we know we're going to have. What's nice is this remote start has allowed folks to start to do some trial and error. And this is one of the things we're really spending a lot of time is investing in mindsets, and the fact that we're kind of all in pilot mode now. So how do we encourage productive risk-taking and helping to ease anxiety by put the training in folks' hands? And Shelley referenced a document that had all the training links. So we did a substantial training during that delayed start week from August 17th through the 21st, where we recorded everything and have used that tool consistently to help train and support teachers. The touch point that we're having along the way is then bringing point people from buildings to update us on how it's going and what challenges they're facing and what successes they're experiencing, so that we can model and encourage that continuous improvement loop. So we're really recommending people practice these tools, work with colleagues to troubleshoot, call in district support, which they have been. And we've got some great examples of some models going out in place. And I say that knowing it is a substantial lift, what we're asking of teachers, kids, parents, ourselves right now. Because when kids come in the building on the 14th at the secondary level, teachers are going to be asked to split their attention, as Mr. Gregory mentioned, to attending to students from the remote context and students live in the classroom. That's something people haven't done. And there's not like a massive research base or something we can all build on. We are truly in a pilot mode structure now, which that demands on us to check in and see how it's going and adjust as the quarter goes on. So I've heard great things from the schools yesterday about mindsets of, yes, this is going to be hard, but thank you for the resources. And now we just need to try it and practice. So our goal and the teams I'm working with schools is to continue to support, give them resources, go out to buildings, help them troubleshoot in real time. So in our elementary schools, we've already got some examples of this happening because of some teachers have dual, they're actually modeling this right now because they may have some students at home and some students in the classroom with special populations or otherwise. We've got some nice pilot examples. So our IT and curriculum teams are supporting those teachers in real time, and people have been really open to that level. So I just want to say I appreciate all you guys do to help support. We're needing patience, encouragement, support right now as we support folks, because we're stepping into uncharted territory right now, but people are engaged in it. And we're looking forward to some next steps and keep checking in with people as we go. That's the very consolidated version. The slide deck has some resources. The one Shelley Kuzer put up just a little bit ago has been a nice reference point for us to kind of rally around. So we've supplied them with it, but now we need to keep coming. It's not enough. One training is certainly not enough on this. So we look forward to keep going with that support. And I don't know if time exists for questions, but I'm happy to field those before, even after the conversation ends today too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I know that the learning has gone very well in our house with the middle and high school levels. So thank you for all the efforts that you've put forward. We appreciate it. Oh.
Thank you.
Tanya, I'm kidding to you, I promise. I'm so sorry that we're running behind, Tanya. Next, we have the IEP with Dr. Belinda Lindsay, the Executive Director for Special Education. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time. I've got some key points to share with you all, so I will do that now, and then hopefully if I could take a couple of questions, I'm happy to do that, or I can always answer them later if they're specific to a parent. One of the things we know is that in special education is very individualized, so it is case by case. So I know if folks and families have specific questions about their child, our team is happy to help and answer those questions. So I'll just highlight some information that I think is important for folks to know. To the greatest extent possible, Academy District 20 is committed to making sure that our students with disabilities have access to special education and all of their related services. However, we know that in this stage that we're at, it may not always look the same because of the situation that we're in. So we are trying to be very creative. We're trying to be very collaborative and know that the delivery of services may look very different than it has in the past, but we're committed to delivering those services even if it looks different. IEPs are going to continue as we develop them and we implement them the way they are set out for each individual child, regardless of the learning environment that a parent chooses. So know that we're committed to looking at every single IEP and making sure that it looks as to the greatest extent possible as we want it to, as it's written in conjunction with the IEP team. And we know, though, that parents have options, and Mr. Gregory went over the options that we've offered all of our students. And although all of them are feasible, they're not always all feasible for all students, depending on their individual education plan. And so one of those examples I know folks have asked is around Journey K-8. And for some students where that acceptance might not have been possible, and really it goes back to the individualized learning plan of the student. We look at the IEP and we have to ensure that we are offering FAPE, which is free appropriate public education for each of our students. If at any time part of those services are a high critical need, they may not be carried out at Journey K-8, but we can certainly offer those services as outlined in the IEP at their home school. And so for some folks, I know that Journey K-8 was a hopeful option, but really based on the IEP, that was difficult and we could not carry out the IEP and really follow through with FAPE. So that's important for folks to know, and we're happy to answer individual questions around that. But really our commitment is to implement the entire IEP as the team has written and identified those specific needs for those students. And so with all of those platforms, whether it's in-person, hybrid, Journey K-8, or synchronous learning, it may warrant that an IEP meeting is called so that the parents and the IEP team can talk about if those platforms are appropriate for each of those individual students, and to make sure that really, in fact, all the needs can be met in whichever platform is selected by a family. Related services, speech, mental health, those things, even though we do have staff shortages, it's important to know that we're committed to providing those services the way they're outlined in the IEP. So if you are in an online format,
Your related services will mirror that platform, and if you're in person, our special service providers are committed to providing that in-person related service as well. So speech, mental health, social groups, things like that, we're still going to be providing those services, and always knowing that we're taking the necessary safety precautions to make sure that staff and students are safe when we provide those services, but still making every attempt to make sure that we can and make sure that our students continue to make progress on their goals and have success at school. So very important to us. Our students in our Bridges program, 18 to 21, that is a community-based program. And so long as our community agencies are open and having the safety protocols in place and parents are in agreement, our students will still be out in the community getting those services that they need as part of their transition programming. Child Find, as you know, that we identify, locate, and evaluate students that are suspected of having a disability. We continue to offer that option for families if they have a student where they suspect there is a disability. We are still doing those evaluations. Some are remote, some are in person. It all depends on the level of need and how appropriate an assessment is for the particular disability that we suspect we will identify. So Child Find continues to operate. Our team does those evaluations on a weekly basis, and we've got the protocols in place to keep everyone safe. Many families have asked about individual education meetings, IEP meetings. We want to just let everybody know that the meetings will continue to occur, but again, with all of the safety measures in place. So it'll be important that families know that case managers will reach out to family members and ask what is appropriate. It could be a Teams meeting such as this. We could have some folks in person if the family and if the parent and the case manager want to be in person, but related service providers could be through Teams, making sure that social distancing, masks, and things like that are in place, but certainly open to that discussion on what an IEP meeting can look like, and always making sure that parents have that opportunity to participate meaningfully in a way that they're comfortable with. Also, progress monitoring and reporting is still going to be a very high focus for us because we know we're delivering instruction in a very different format. It's going to be really important for our special education teams to continue to progress monitor student growth and to have those procedures that we're logging all of our services, because at the end of every quarter and every month, we're trying to make sure that students in the platform that parents have selected, that they truly are making the growth needed for all of the goals and objectives that have been identified by the team. And so if at some point they aren't making that progress, the team will get together and talk about what are some different strategies and services they could put in place to support the student to make sure they're successful. And if the platform is not appropriate, the team along with the parent will make those decisions together, and everything will be documented in a prior written notice. Sometimes we do suspect that an evaluation will be needed, and if so, the team will do that through the IEP process in a collaborative format. And lastly, I think it's important to know that accommodations and modifications, even in an online format, virtual, they still can be provided to students. And so case managers, our staff will be collaborating with general education teachers and making sure that any accommodation and modification can still be provided. And if it cannot, what is an alternative modification or accommodation? We know in a virtual setting, some of the things that we've rightly done in person may not be applicable, but we can be creative and innovative and think of different things that would help our students still access their education and be successful. So those are some important highlights around special education students with disabilities. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you so much for that. We currently don't have any questions, but I found that very enlightening. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's an election year, so we've asked for Tanya Thompson to come in and chat with us a little bit about the Fair Campaign Practices Act, make sure that everybody's saying what they should and not saying what they shouldn't. Thank you, Tanya, for being here. We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm here today. I'm Tanya Thompson. For those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet, I apologize that this first introduction has to be over a virtual environment, but I look forward to working with Parent Sounding Board throughout the year, especially as our legislative session gets underway, and provide you with updates on issues related to, or that impact K-12 education. So as previously mentioned, this is a national election that we will have on November 3rd. And so I wanted to take the time just to enlighten you with the details of Fair Campaign Practice Act that really outlines what school district employees can and cannot do during this campaign season. So I shared my screen here, and just as a general rule, staff members can use district facilities and equipment so long as we do that in a way that's even-handed and doesn't result in expending funds to support or campaign against issues. So I'll get a little, I'll explain that better. But again, district staff members.
+14026595255 is now exiting.
District staff members are free to contribute their own funds and services to voice their opinions on issues during their personal time. So I have for you a handout that I would usually share, but if you're so interested, I'll make sure that this gets attached to the minutes. But this gives us a visual of what we can do and what we can't. So we'll just start with what we are able to do as district staff members, and that is we can answer unsolicited questions that are presented to us regarding ballot issues or candidates. But again, bracketing that in the notion that we do that pretty even-handedly, that we're not overwhelmingly supporting one issue or one candidate as opposed to the other. If we're on duty, if we're in our building or we're on district property, that's where we're a bit limited. I apologize. We also may work on campaigns and speak out on ballot issues or candidates on our own time, as I've mentioned. Anytime that we become involved in those activities, we need to make it very clear that we are utilizing our own time. So if we're accountable for calling in our time, that needs to be done in advance. So it's clear that for the record, we are not on district time during our engagement in those activities. Groups that are opposed or support ballot issues or candidates, we can allow them to use our district facilities to discuss the issues, so long as we do that consistent with our own policies. And so we do have facility use policy as well as a standard facility use agreement. So we can allow that to occur. For example, if one candidate wants to host a town hall and use one of our district facilities and completes the facility use agreement and goes through the proper procedures, we can grant that permission. However, if the opposing candidate would like to do the same, we cannot exclude them. We would have to lend them the same access, providing that same procedure is followed. So that's a summation of what we can do. Now getting into what we are prohibited from doing, and that is expending funds or supplies that belong to taxpayers. So public funds cannot be used to support or to refute any ballot issue or candidate. We also, believe it or not, get asked this quite frequently, is whether or not we could send home a pamphlet or a flyer supporting a ballot initiative or a candidate with students in their backpacks, in their Friday folders. However that information, it seems simple enough that we could send that home, very efficient way of getting information out to our parents. However, that's not permissible under our Fair Campaign Practice Act. So we would have to very graciously decline the request to do that. We also cannot allow or direct staff members to assist directly or indirectly on campaigns during working hours. We can't use our district resources, copying, printing, fax machines, telephones, bulletin boards, bulk mail permits, You name it, we really cannot use that to urge our voters to vote in favor of or against a ballot issue or candidate. We also can't provide transportation or advertising utilizing public property or funds for the purpose of influencing passage or defeat of issues or candidates. And lastly, we can't grant a staff member or an officer leave from their job with the district with pay to go work on the campaign. So that's really what we can and cannot do. We're fairly limited by Fair Campaign Practice Act. And if there's any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so at this time.
Tanya, thank you. We don't have any questions at this time, but thank you so much for that.
All right, well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you guys here shortly.
We'll move into the question and answer session. At this time, Tom, we actually only have one comment, and it is Linda Killis wanted to say that she thinks that the district is doing an amazing job. The staff and students have done wonderfully maneuvering through these unprecedented times and all the changes in direction you have had to endure. I am so impressed. What a superb job. Thank you.
Well, great. On behalf of everybody, thank you. But I would say to especially this group, if you get a chance and a teacher is doing something that your student appreciates or you appreciate, please take 2 minutes to send a quick email to the teacher saying how much you appreciate them or what they're doing. And especially since what Jeremy talked about earlier with, I think he used trial and error. This is for our secondary teachers, middle school and high school, this is a new experience for them. And I think input is important as to what works really well, what maybe doesn't work so well. So if you could help with that, of course, respectfully, but help a teacher with what you or your students really appreciate about something that happened in a remote lesson. It's not going to go away in the near future, at least, because we'll be doing this for a while, even when partial classrooms come back in person. So anything you can do to help support the teachers through this. They're a little anxious. It's change. It's something that's some of them adapt to really quickly, and some of them it's very foreign. None of them chose to be online teachers, right? They all chose to be teachers in classrooms with students, and they've been forced, just like your students have, to be in a different environment. So I get lots of kudos for what teachers have done, and really those kudos should go to them. So please send those directly to teachers or principals if you get a chance. And again, like I started off with, I appreciate the support, the grace, the flexibility, all of those characteristics from our community, because it is what separates us from other districts. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And again, I'll say thanks to all the folks that chose to attend this morning. I know it went a little bit longer, and I'll own that. That's my fault. So, but that's not the first time.
It
probably won't be the last.
longer. No, look. That was on me. I misread the agenda, but look, we're still 3 minutes ahead of schedule.
Perfect timing.
One last thing, Heather, that I replied in the chat box and put a link. That's probably important for folks to just play around with if you get time. Inside of that link are other links. If you go to that link, it's a web page at the Colorado Department of Health, but inside of there, you'll find other links like the flow chart that we have to follow when symptoms are presented. So it's a lot more than just one link. There's probably like 5 or 6 embedded links within that. So if you get a chance, there's lots of good information inside of that.
Great. We'll make sure that we include that in the notes as well. And thank you to all of our presenters for rolling with our time adjustment. I really appreciate that. Thank you to everyone for attending today. We will see you all virtually online next month. The October 7th meeting will be at 12:15 again because of the delayed Wednesday start. So thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate it. we'll get those meeting notes out to you as soon as possible. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Mark Hoffman is now exiting.
Great job, Heather. Great job. You're mute. You're muted.
It was supposed to be easier on the computer.
No, I think the timing went great. I mean, we kept the staff a little longer, but you know what? I think the timing was perfect and answering the questions was great.
Yes, it was. Yes. Thank you, Tom, for answering those. We appreciate it.
Thanks to both of you again. Really appreciate it all. And Heather, you're a pro at this.
She is. She's so great.
So natural for you. Both of you. It's just so natural. So thanks again. I echo this group is my favorite just because the questions it's an informed group of parents.
Mm-hmm.
So the questions are at a much deeper level. They're informed questions. They're not accusations and it's just different than the general people out there that really don't know and are throwing off questions. I just appreciate it because they're very informed. They know what's going on. So it makes the discussion so much different. So I appreciate what you guys are doing and thank you, and we'll see you next month.
Sounds good. Diane, thank you so much. Ann, thank you.
Yay. We'll get together soon, Heather.
Sounds good.
Diane.
Bye, guys.
And
Thanks.
I'll email that to you.